At exactly 3:03 a.m., every emergency broadcast across the country came alive, without warning. No alerts, no instructions, just static, and a voice that seemed to know everything about you. Authorities called it a technical glitch. Those who watched never slept again. This is the footage no one was supposed to see. It started in a small town on the outskirts of the Midwest. A local radio operator, Harold Sims, was making his routine overnight rounds through the emergency frequency bands when he noticed something strange. Every channel, every frequency, every odd-numbered transmission he checked, there was a signal. But it wasn't like anything he'd ever encountered. The sound was wrong. Low static, yes, but underneath it there were murmurs, whispers almost imperceptible at first. He tuned the dial, thinking it was interference from the new power lines the town had installed. But then the whispers became clear. They weren't words, not at first. They were fragments, snippets of voices he'd never heard, calling names he knew, his wife's name, his sister's, his own. By morning, he was shaking. His station logs showed no technical errors. The frequencies were clean. But he had recorded something because he had to. The tape had to exist. It wasn't just Harold. Across the country, operators at emergency broadcast stations noticed the same signals. Static filled the screens of emergency televisions. The early morning sirens tried to pierce the fog, and radios hissed and crackled in unison. All seemed normal until the static started forming shapes. Dusty tapes and recordings began appearing in abandoned stations. One such tape, discovered in the old Federal Emergency Broadcast Network building, was labeled simply March 17, Warning. The office was a ruin of dust and cobwebs, the shelves empty but for a handful of tapes. Whoever had been here last had vanished. No signs of struggle, no personal effects left behind, only the tape. Those who found it said the static seemed alive. It wriggled across the surface of the tape itself, as if mocking them. Some even claimed it left shadows on their skin, small crawling shadows that disappeared when looked at directly, only to return when ignored. When they played the tape, the world changed. The screen flickered to life. At first, only black and white static filled the screen. Then a man's voice, low and monotone, echoed through the room. "This is not a test. All citizens must—" And then it broke. The words twisted, distorted, replaced by more static. Shadows moved behind the static, forming shapes, doors, windows, familiar faces, faces that belonged to people the viewer knew. Friends, neighbors, family, people who were gone, people who should have been alive but weren't. The viewers began to panic. Some claimed to see loved ones appear in their own homes, crying for help from rooms that were empty. Others saw themselves, or rather, something that looked like themselves, doing things they would never do. Their own lives distorted, displayed for all to see, like a reflection in broken glass. It wasn't long before the signal spread. It wasn't just TV, radios, emergency sirens, even phones and tablets. The signal infected everything. Smart speakers whispered at night. Laptops displayed faces in the corner of the screen, watching. No one could escape it. Some people tried to destroy the devices, burn them, smash them, unplug them. The signal always returned, faster, smarter, personalized. It wasn't random. The static was intelligent. Heart rates spiked. People began losing their minds. Sleep became impossible. Those who slept dreamed of the static. It came into their rooms, creeping across walls, moving over ceilings, whispering names in voices familiar and alien. The longer they stared at the screen, or even just imagined it, the more it learned. It remembered. It replicated their fears, their secrets, their regrets. It knew them better than they knew themselves. Government teams attempted containment. Broadcast towers were destroyed, servers wiped, but the static came back each time, more refined, more invasive. Every attempt only strengthened it. The tape quarantined, copied itself. Surviving fragments were stored in secret vaults. Then, quietly, they disappeared. Files erased, recordings vanished. It was like it had never existed, but it had. Survivors told similar stories. An old woman named Eliza described seeing herself on a screen, committing a crime she would never commit. She woke screaming, her hands covered in mud, her clothes torn, though she had never left her bedroom. Another survivor, a teenager named Marcus, saw his younger brother crying for help on the screen, even though his brother had died years earlier in a drowning accident. When Marcus went to the river the next day, there was nothing there. The vision had been real somehow, and yet unreal. Carl was the only one who managed to save a fragment of the tape, what he called the last warning. In his recording, the final moments before the signal disappeared are chilling. The static writhes and moves, forming doors and windows that should not exist. Faces appear and disappear, and then something new. The static looks directly at the camera, not a human face, not even a shape, something that is everything and nothing. A whisper rises through the static, chilling in its intimacy. "You shouldn't have seen this," and the screen goes black. After that night, the world tried to move on. Authorities dismissed it as technical malfunctions, mass hysteria, or experimental interference. But the tape exists, and the signal waits. Some claim that if a TV is left on in the dead of night, if the channels are quiet and the world seems still, the signal may return, not as static, not as a glitch, but as a voice, calling you, learning from you, watching. It is not a story. It is a warning, and it never truly leaves. Those who saw it, they are still out there, walking among us, quiet, shaking, never sleeping, always listening. Sometimes in a quiet neighborhood you can hear it, the hum of a forgotten emergency broadcast, a faint whisper, a name, maybe yours, and if you stare too long, it will see you back.